Donte, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show. Now, to begin, a Delaware jury has found Hunter Biden guilty on all 3 counts in his federal gun case. Break down the charges for us.
Yes, Tiffany, thank you for having me. So with this case against Hunter Biden, what the allegation was is that he knew he was a drug addict and he lied on the forms he filled out in order to obtain a firearm. It was really that simple. So the verdict itself, Hunter Biden being found guilty of all 3 of the charges, which include falsifying documents and also possessing that firearm, is not a surprise because the best witness that the prosecution had against Hunter Biden was Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden put out a book where he outlined his drug addiction. He talked about checking himself into rehab. So it was almost impossible for him to say that he did not know that he was addicted to drugs and that he would not be eligible for a gun because he outlined that addiction in the books he wrote. So it's not a surprise that he was found guilty of those charges. And it really was as simple as the prosecutor showing that there was an addiction, that he purchased a gun during the time he was addicted and lied on the forms in order to be able to do so.
And a sentencing date hasn't been set yet, but what can we expect next in this case?
So it's going to take some time. Generally in federal court, where I handle a lot of cases, it's about 120 days in between the time you're found guilty and the time you're sentenced. There's an investigation that has to happen, just like a lot of people have heard of. Former President Donald Trump had his investigation interview yesterday, where they just ask basic interview questions of who he is, what he does, get a background on him so that the judge can get a clear picture of who he's sentencing. In this particular case, Hunter Biden he's exposed to a lot of jail time. He can go to jail for 10 to 25 years. I don't think it's going to be that kind of time. Similar cases in this situation that I've dealt with, the range is about 1 to 2 years in prison, but jail time is a reality here. And I think is pretty standard for people in this situation. And the judge will get that full picture of Hunter Biden. He now knows what he's guilty of. He'll know his background and he'll decide what's an appropriate sentence for these crimes.
Now, some legal analysts have said that Hunter Biden can appeal on Second Amendment grounds. Tell us more about that, how it relates to what's called the Bruin test.
Yeah, so that test, and just so everybody knows, we have the right to bear arms in this country. It's the Second Amendment. The first one is the freedom of speech, was the most important thing. And then the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. They wanted to make it clear that every citizen had that right. However, there's been some carvings out of that general statement where you can be found not eligible to have a firearm. A lot of those include being a felon or a convicted felon, but sometimes they include not even just being a convicted felon, but if you're, accused of stalking or something like that, and you have a stay away order, order of protection, you can't bear arms. So right now in the court, there's this push to have everyone eligible to bear arms. The Bruin case came out because New York specifically, New York State had restrictions that they put on people where you had to show that there was an active threat against you in order to be able to carry a firearm. The Supreme Court says you can't do that. You can't put extra restrictions on people that take away from their right to bear arms. So what some experts are looking at this case and saying is, well, he had an addiction, but other people do drugs, and that does not mean that it takes away their Second Amendment right. I think in this particular case, it's a little different because he did lie on forms. There is that restriction there, but they're pointing to this as maybe a staple case so that there is no qualifications that you need, and the right to bear arms is absolute. Whether or not you sometimes use recreational drugs or any other kind of drugs, that right can't be taken away from you.
Now, President Biden has said he would not pardon his son, even though he has the authority to do so. What do you make of that decision? Do you think it's the right move here?
Tiffany, we have to look at this in 2 different ways. Are we, as a parent, you say, I have the opportunity, if my son is sentenced to jail time, and it could be significant jail time, to take that off of his plate. But as the president of the United States, do you want to set that example? Do you want to say, I'm going to override the will of the court, the will of the jury, and pardon my son for this crime? So there's a couple of different things that can happen. He could fully pardon and this is President Joe Biden can fully pardon Hunter Biden and say the crime that he's convicted of, that felony conviction, is no more. And if he does that, then it's all over because it is a federal charge. And as president, President Biden has that authority. Or if he doesn't want to do a full pardon, he could commute the sentence and say, I'm going to leave the the felony charge as an example. But if Hunter Biden is sentenced to jail time, I'm going to commute his sentence and say he does not have to do that jail time. He has that option as well. So we will see. I know that President Biden has said he's not going to do it. That was kind of in theory, though. He said that before the verdict, and then shortly after the verdict, he said he believes in the rule of law. But if Hunter Biden is sentenced to jail for a significant period of time, does President Joe Biden say, I'm going to help my son in this situation because I'm a father first before president? Or does he agree to be a president first and say, I want to make it clear that everybody in this country is going to be held by the same standard and the same rules of law?
Now, Hunter Biden is also facing federal tax charges. This is in a separate case. Does this guilty verdict impact that case in any way?
It does, because what you look at is sentencing. And a couple of things. One, if a jury is selected in that case, obviously because of the publicity involved with this, they will know that Hunter Biden has been convicted of a felony. It wouldn't come in during court, but it will affect him at sentencing if he's found guilty of that tax charge. So what you don't want to do is have multiple felonies because it increases the amount of time that you would have to serve for any penalty. What I believe is going to happen, from my understanding, Hunter Biden in that tax case has already paid those expenses or paid that tax dollar amount down. What I think is going to happen is there's going to be some kind of resolution. If I was representing Hunter Biden, I would be working with the prosecutors in that case to resolve it so I don't have to sit through another trial and run the risk of a judge sentencing me to jail time in both cases. I would try to resolve that case to see if I can get some kind of sentence that includes probation or something where I will not have jail time and I don't have to worry about both cases kind of being piled on at the same time.
Donte Mills, criminal defense attorney and national trial attorney at Mills and Edwards. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.